Little Polar Bear Finds a Friend. Lars, the little polar bear, was very lonely. As he gazed across the cool blue ocean, he wished he had a friend to play with. When he got home, Lars's mother could tell right away that something was wrong. "Why are you so sad?" she asked. "Because I have no friends here," said Lars gloomily. "Don't worry," said his mother. "One day you'll find someone to play with." The next morning, when Lars went out for a walk, he thought he saw another little polar bear standing next to a big wooden box. "I should go over and say hello," thought Lars. But when he got closer, he realized that the polar bear was made of wood. Lars smelled food, so he walked into the box to see what it was. Suddenly there was a loud bang, and the door at the end of the box snapped shut. Lars was trapped. It was so dark inside the box that Lars couldn't see a thing. He threw himself against the door, but it wouldn't open. Lars sat in the box for hours. He thought his parents would be worried about him. They must think that something was wrong when he didn't come home. Suddenly, he heard voices outside. The box began to move, and Lars felt it be lifted. He was very scared. The box bumped up and down and rocked back and forth for another hour, and it finally stopped moving. Lars cried out, but nobody opened the door. Then the box began to shake, and Lars heard a loud roar. He felt as if he was being pushed downwards and backwards, and there was a funny feeling in his tummy. Then the feeling passed. Lars was now very tired, so he curled up in the box and fell asleep. The next thing Lars knew, there was a loud crash, and at last the door to the box burst open. Lars found himself in a strange place, filled with many wooden boxes and lots of strange smells. "Hey, little polar bear, come over here," said a deep, friendly voice. Lars looked up and was startled to see a huge walrus. "What are you doing here?" asked Lars. "I was trapped just like you," said the walrus. "The owl says that we're being taken to a zoo." "What's a zoo?" asked Lars. "I don't know," grunted the walrus, "and I don't want to find out. Do you think that you could lift the latch on this cage?" Lars banged the latch with his paws, and finally it swung open. The walrus lumbered out of his cage, and together they started to free all the other animals. As the cages were opened, Lars was surrounded by many animals he had never seen before. But the biggest surprise came out of the last box. A little brown bear whose name was Bee. The walrus was very clever, and soon he had found a way to escape. But all the animals were so happy to be free that they ran away, leaving the slow walrus behind. "Wait for me," he cried after them. Then Lars and Bee heard the walrus cry. They stopped and turned around and went back to help their friend. "I'm sorry we ran off," said Lars. "We started together and we will finish together." By the time that the three of them reached the woods, it was dark. They barely escaped being caught in the bright glare of the searchlights. When they were deep in the woods and out of danger, Lars, Bee, and the walrus fell fast asleep. The next morning, when Lars woke up, he was surprised to hear Bee crying. "What's wrong?" asked Lars. "We're not in danger anymore." It's my parents, sobbed Bee. They were captured earlier, and I'll probably never see them again. I'm sorry, said Lars. But then he had an idea. Why don't you come home with me? He said happily. You can be my sister. But won't your parents be upset because I'm brown? Asked Bee. Of course not, said Lars. Bears are bears. When the walrus woke up, the three of them talked about how they would get home. If we could find a river, said the walrus, I could carry the two of you on my back. While the walrus talked, Bee noticed some bees flying around the tree. I'm hungry, Bee said, turning to Lars. Will you help me get some honey? Lars had never seen bees before, and he was afraid. He hid behind some bushes with the walrus. Lars and the walrus liked the honey very much, and as soon as they had eaten, the three friends set off to find a river. As they walked along, Lars couldn't believe how many trees there were in the forest. Luckily, Bee had such a good sense of smell that she quickly led them to a small stream. The walrus jumped right in and rolled around. Oh, this feels great, he said happily. Climb on my back and let's get going. As the walrus swam along, the stream turned into a river. Lars told Bee all about his wonderful home. Then Lars noticed a familiar smell. We're coming to a city, he said. I visited a city once. We must be careful. Let's stop until it gets dark. While the three of them sat on the riverbank and waited for the sun to go down, Lars told them about his adventure in the city. I met some nice cats, he said, but everything is very dirty. My home is much nicer than a city. The next day, Lars and the walrus recognized the smell of the salty seawater. We're almost home, Lars said to Bee. Not quite, said the walrus. We still have far to go, and first we have to pass through those big gates up ahead. Soon they found themselves in the middle of the ocean. A storm had started and the waves were getting bigger and bigger. Hang on tight, yelled the walrus. At last, the three friends arrived in the Arctic. Bee stared at the strange landscape. She had seen snow before, but she had never seen so much of it. The walrus dropped Lars and Bee off near Lars's home. It was time to say goodbye. Thanks for waiting for me, said the walrus. I never would have made it home without you. And we never would have made it without you, said Lars. As the walrus swam away, Lars and Bee set out to find Lars's parents. Bee was having trouble walking on the ice and snow. She kept slipping and sliding. Suddenly, Lars saw his parents and ran up to greet them. Bee slid along behind him. Where have you been? Said his mother. We were so worried about you. Lars quickly told his parents about his latest adventures and explained that Bee has been separated from her parents. She's afraid that you wouldn't like her because she's brown, said Lars. That's silly, said Lars's father. Bears are bears. Lars's mother gave Bee a big hug. You are very beautiful, she said. You can stay with us as long as you like. Lars was very happy. I can't wait to get home, he said. There's so many things I want to show my new friend. The end.